So did you guys get a lot of snow up there right after Christmas?
Yeah, it was about, I mean, it seemed like 12 inches because one before Christmas, it was 6 inches about. And then after Christmas, it was, 6 inches, at least in my neighborhood.
Yeah. Not like the 5 feet in Leavenworth, though.
No,
No.
thank goodness.
That was amazing.
Yeah. All right, my clock says it is 6 o'clock, so I want to say welcome, good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Yes. Director Ray. Director Ray.
Hi. Am I there?
Yes. Hi, Mike. Director Kelly.
Here.
Director Kingman.
Hello. I'm here.
Here.
Director President Levesque.
Here.
Director Knapp.
I'm here.
Student Advisor Madeline Andrich. Student Advisor Kyle Schroeder.
Here.
Superintendent Sweeting.
Here.
Thank you, Debbie. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I make a motion, we approve the agenda.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Will the secretary please call for a roll call vote on the agenda, please?
Yes. Director Ray.
Hi.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. Our agenda is now approved and we can begin the part of our agenda that is our welcome and overview of the evening and our learning outcomes by Dr. Sweeting. Thank you.
Good evening. So tonight, it's pretty exciting. We started a series. So tonight we have part 1, tomorrow we have part 2. But tonight we will continue to build our capacity as a team. And we have a guest with us, and she may be new to some of you, but she's been with us before, Patty Wood. She is amazing. We're glad she's back, and she has a wealth of experience. She has been on the Kelso School Board for years. She's currently on the State Board of Education, and we're just excited that she's going to join us and help us understand a bit more about creating conditions of success as a board team, and also understanding board and superintendent operating principles, which is actually aligns with our policy 1600. So after we have a team building activity, then Patty will engage us in some thoughtful thinking and conversation. And then after a quick break, then I'll review aspects of our strategic plan and some data tools that we have available to us. And then we'll have one item that has been publicized as an action item, and it's the hopefully the 5th reading and final adoption, immediate adoption of policy 1400. And then we should be at the end of tonight's meeting. So that's where we're at. So with that, I'm going to, I guess, Just a second, I'm in advance. I didn't do a very good job. I'm not very good driver on this PowerPoint. Sorry. Okay, team building activity. And I'm echoing. I can hear myself echoing. But all right, there are 4 questions. Just a second. You guys hear me echoing?
Yes, both times.
I turned my volume all the way off.
Okay, say something again, Dr. Sweeting.
Okay.
That's better.
Good. Is that better? Okay. Okay, great. So there are 4 questions, and this is given the time that we have tonight, we're not going to be able to have every person that's on the, in the meeting right now participate. So I'm asking that the elected board and our student advisor, I will participate. And so, because we have about 15 minutes for this. So if we do have some extra time after that, we'll see. So please think about these 4 questions. Take a minute to write down your answer, think about your answer, because you're going to share it publicly with all of us. Now, normally we would go into breakout rooms and do that, but we're just going to do it out loud and just learn a little bit about ourselves. And Patty, we'll have you do this as well, so we get to know you a little bit better too. And cabinet members, please be ready just in case we have time. Okay, that was some short amount of time. And I've got the list of names here. So any brave person would like to start first? And if you're okay, I'm going to stop sharing so we could see each other better, okay? Because it's nice to see the people. So who would like to go first?
I'll go
I'm
first.
happy
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sharon.
Okay. I'll be the first female guinea pig. Okay. Something I own and I always have the urge to buy more perfume. I love perfume. Favorite place to vacation and why? Santa Cruz and the Monterey Bay area, because some of my very favorite vacations were spent with my grandparents in Carmel, and I met my now husband in Santa Cruz. So even though I was from the East Coast, we had a commonality with the Bay Area. So that's my favorite place. Greatest challenge during experience during COVID, probably speaking at a pace I like to talk with a mask on. I'm a fast talker and the mask gets in the way. And in 5 years, changes I'd like to see take place. I would like to see the Voting Rights Act passed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry. Very nice. Next.
I'm
What?
happy to share.
Thanks, Mike.
Gotcha. This is probably better. I don't know why my initial connection was so terrible. So something, there's a couple things, but the thing I would willing to share publicly would be bourbon.
Okay.
Always in search of new bourbons.
Okay.
Yeah, how about that? Let's see, vacation spot. A warm sun with family. So a lot of times that means Florida for us and our family, but yeah, get out of this wet, nasty stuff that, yeah, just, and then COVID challenge, losing coworkers. I lost a whole bunch of coworkers at my job, upwards of, I think 11 or 12. So yeah, it's pretty challenging for sure. And 5 years, Arlington. I'd love to see a new post-middle school, and more likely than not, a 5th elementary school. And yeah, those are the 2 big things that came to mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
I'll tell you that no matter how many well, I've told Cabinet several things, and it's hard to choose because no matter how many earrings I have, I just don't ever have enough. That sounds really meaningless, but it's just, there's always some cute earring. And then, of course, and I know I hands down is the beach. I don't care which beach it is. I just love the beach. I love the sound of it. I love the smell of it. I love the beach. And I think the reason, the why is that to me, it's renewing and causes me to center in that I am just this small piece of sand in this huge universe, trying to make a difference. And anyway, there's some interesting stories about, just single pieces of sand or one starfish that make a difference. And so anyway, I think for me, the greatest challenge, other than, the learning of kids being challenged so much, is that it's been hard for the quarantine. I mean, just for people to have to be contained and be contained even when they felt good. So quarantine is just I don't like that concept. And I think it's been really hard for our families. And 5 years from now, I join Mike, and I a new post is absolute. But I also hope that for Arlington in 5 years that we, the post in elementary school, but also that we have changed maybe the supermajority rule, so that it's easier for those kinds of things to pass, like the post. So that could happen first, and then we could get our bond passed for post. So that's for me. Next.
I can take it. So for something that I can't get enough of, I don't really know. I guess I'm kind of minimalist in that way. I also don't have very much money, so that helps. But so I just don't really have anything for that one. Sorry. Favorite place to visit? I said out of state. I just like to see different places. It's always really interesting to me. So pretty much anywhere out of state, but especially cities, since we live in Arlington and it's definitely not a big city. The hardest part for COVID for me was having to stay home. I mean, I love my house, but eventually my room just kind of got boring. Like I bought a new desk over COVID. I just couldn't stand to look at my old one anymore. And then one thing that I like to change, I said the same thing as Mike. I wanted a new school, either post or a new elementary or just anything really. I think that would be kind of nice to see.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, so much. All right, next.
I can go next. That's okay, Mary. It was really tough for me between paintbrushes and puppies. So one of those I can never get enough. My favorite place to vacation is always Arch Cape, Oregon, because my family has been going there since. I have pictures of my family from like 100 years ago. So it always feels like going home.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and the biggest challenge for COVID maybe is the constant, like, I guess it goes along with quarantining, but being ready to at like any second you have to stop everything in quarantine, or like your classroom, like the constant transitioning and not knowing, sign kids up for this activity and then it gets canceled, and it's getting a little old. I think this week I'm starting to feel that. And I wrote down, post was like the perfect answer, of course. We all want that. But for what I was thinking was, I want to see more student voices and young people voices involved in every aspect of what we do. I want to see more of that in Arlington. I'm seeing more groups forming and things like that. And I love that. I love to hear from them. And I think it's really important and exciting.
Thanks, Erica. Okay, Mike Kingman. Got to unmute first. Wait, Mike can't hear you. Oh, you can't unmute. Can you do it? This is like a Pictionary thing. Hold up your picture. And sorry, we would love to hear you. All right. Okay, so let me look at the timing here. So we did pretty good. I would welcome if any of, what?
Do you want me to share mine?
Yes, I would.
I didn't want to cut you off, but I didn't say anything yet. I'll go really fast. The things I can't get enough of is running shoes
True.
and half marathons. I think I like half marathons the best, and I want to sign up for all of them all the time. And my favorite is also the ocean. All my favorite childhood memories are visiting the ocean and playing at the beach and just playing in water, and it's peaceful and nature's lovely and sun and sand and water. And then I think the hardest thing for me during COVID time was seeing so much suffering, seeing so many people that were stressed and overwhelmed and sick and hurt and sad and scared and lonely, and just my own children and their struggles and all of our sanity. And then I also wrote down post-middle school. So there you go.
Thanks, Mary. So is there a cabinet member or Patty? Patty, why don't you go? And then I want the cabinet members, if any of them want to share, they're welcome to do that too.
So running shoes was good, Mary, but I thought mine was books. Like I never have enough books, and living close to Powell's bookstore in Portland, it's like where I go if I'm depressed. But books, and my vacation area is any mountain, like any high spot. I can't get enough of it. Same as Chris along the beach. I like feeling sometimes knowing you're small in the world is reassuring. I don't know what that says about me, my psyche, but I like to know there's a lot bigger things than me out there. And I think for me too, Mary, is like family. It was nearly a year and a half before I got to see one of my kids, and my dad during that. But I think as a leader of an organization, I think the hardest thing for me was not being able to see how people were doing, because you're never together. So you couldn't walk through the office and just check on folks. You couldn't just get a sense of how they were doing emotionally, mentally, physically, because you couldn't do that with 85 people. And that was really challenging for me. And I obviously want Arlington to get a new school. So that is definitely what I want for a 5-year plan.
Thank you, Patty. Any of the, I invite any cabinet member that would like to share. Not that you have to, but we have a few moments. Okay, I don't see any turning on their cameras, so I think we're good. But anyway, just wanted to spend a little bit of time just learning a little bit about each other. Oh, Brian, you're going to be brave. Okay, Brian.
I'll be game. So I wish I was like Kyle and didn't have any wants, but I want another motorcycle. I'll just put it out there. I'm ready. The second, Chris, could you remind me of the second?
What is favorite place to vacation and why?
Oh yeah, anywhere there's a beach and sunshine. Yeah, that's all good for me.
And what about challenges during
COVID? I think the biggest challenge is trying to maintain connections with people that I used to see face to face all the time. It's different on Zoom, and I don't want my world to be narrowed down by this in a way that's fascinating. And then the last one was, what do I want in 5 years? Post-middle school replacement for sure.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, now I'm thinking that Carrie's thinking about talking and Eric's thinking about talking and Gary. So one of you go forth and start.
I'll go quickly. So I've answered these before, but tools or exercise equipment or bicycles, that kind of thing is what I would buy. Vacation spot anywhere where I can use my bicycles and other kinds of being active, basically. So it could be the beach, or that could be anywhere where I can be active. Worst thing about COVID, hardest thing about COVID, watching my kids and other people's kids and what has been done to them through this. And currently that's masks and other quarantines and all those kinds of things. It's been really hard on the kids. And the last one, 5 years in Arlington. Yeah, post middle school would be great. And hopefully kids are not in masks anymore in 5 years.
Hope not. Thanks, Eric. Okay, Carrie or Gary.
All right, Gary, I'll jump in. All right. Something I can never have enough of is shoes, for sure. Running shoes is a genre of shoe. So I do find myself like, it's painful. I think I might be a running shoe hoarder, actually. It's hard. They're like friends, given a long enough timeline when you love them enough. But really any shoe can be a good friend. In terms of a favorite vacation spot, I think anywhere with my husband is always a good thing. Anywhere where we can be outside for a fair percentage of our vacation is also a good thing. So I do love international travel. We went to Scotland a few years ago and it was truly, truly amazing. Any country that has the unicorn as its national animal has to be a winner. I think the thing that's been hardest for me about COVID, professionally speaking, is seeing our focus realistically, right? It's not that it's not important, but change from learning to safety. That we've spent a vast majority of our time, which is right and good, on how to keep kids and staff safe instead of what are kids learning and how are we going to help them. And that's been tough. And what was the last question again? Sorry.
5 years from now?
Oh, 5 years. Well, surely a new post-middle school, but I agree too that we're going to need a new elementary before too long. And so it would be great if we could get both of them.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, Gary and Gina, be thinking about, I'll tell you the questions. They're similar to what we had the other day. So Gary.
Okay, so for things I can't get enough of, if you've been to my office, anything Husky related, I bleed purple and gold. So again, no surprise there. For places I like to visit, Leavenworth, even though I heard last week they got literally feet of snow up there, which is just crazy to me. But yeah, Leavenworth, whether winter or summer, it's a magical place. I really like Leavenworth. Let's see, what was the third?
Challenge.
I'm sorry.
COVID challenge, a challenge.
COVID challenges, yes. So what I do, a lot of it is, go out to the schools and take pictures and or a video. And it's really hard when, staff and students have the masks on. It's really hard to tell their expressions, although you can tell a lot by their eyes. I tell them to smile, but they have masks on. But their eyes are twinkling. So that's always good. And then of course, post middle school. I know how hard, the community has worked over the years to try to pass that. And it's a challenge every time. So I agree with Dr. Sweeting about the super majority. Hopefully that'll change because our community really deserves that. So yeah, definitely post.
Thanks, Gary. Gina, so no matter how many you have of this, you can't get enough of it.
Scrapbooking materials, paper, pens, wrapping paper, bows, tissue, things like that. I'm a paper rat.
Right. Okay. And what about your favorite place to vacation?
I have to say Whistler, Canada, BC, just from pure convenience of how close it is for the type of resort that it is, and don't have to get on an airplane. But it has been substantially harder we haven't been in 2 years now because of COVID. So.
And what's been the greatest challenge or that you've experienced during COVID?
It's actually getting vaccinated. The after effects of vaccinated, probably being sick for 2 days, 2 or 3 days. But thankfully I didn't get sick. But right, that's the first thing that came to my mind was that created the most immediate physical pain is feeling sick after having a vaccine, but I'd still do it again.
Good. All right. 5 years from now, what do you hope to see happen or have taken place in Arlington?
I would say 5 years from now, of course, post, but I also say continued cohesiveness and teamwork of everybody that's doing this important work together, just continued, togetherness, teamwork.
Thank you, Gina. So
is that it?
Yes, that's it. That's it. Except now I'm gonna,
Did I pass?
you, of course, of course. But you're an easy person to buy gifts for. You just find a bag and put a bunch of papers and pins and wrapping paper. Yeah, that'd be easy. So there's two other people that are in the meeting that we probably have time to if they feel comfortable, if they want to. So Ed, would you like to share?
Certainly, I'd love to share. Hello, everybody. I can never get enough tools and farm implements and things like that. I like to play around at home with all sorts of things. Favorite vacation spots, anywhere outside of Arlington or at home's a good place too. As long as I can hang out with Susan, that's a good thing. COVID, the toughest part for me has been staffing. Just trying to figure out where to put people when everybody was gone and furloughs and bring people back. And that was a interesting challenge. Now with the COVID things, with people going and out and ill for various reasons, not necessarily COVID, it's still a challenge. Next one, please.
5 years from now?
Retirement.
Okay, all right. Well, everybody, thank you for sharing. I think it was nice to hear just from each of you, just some of those thoughts. So next, I'm going to introduce Patty Wood. She is, like I said already, she's amazing. She is currently on the State Board of Education, serving there. And she also, she's actually here tonight as through WASDA, so through that organization as a consultant, and she's been here with us before. She does trainings. She knows what she's talking about. She's experienced it. She's still experiencing it. And she's going to help us, think about how do we continue to build our board team, and become a strong and effective governance team, for one thing, for benefiting each student. So she's going to spend the next hour or so with us, and so enjoy. So Patty, I think you can share your screen when you're ready, whenever you want to.
Okay, great. Well, I was going to start off with a bit of a warm up, but I don't think I'll do that now. So what I would like to do is just a reminder. I think the first time I came and met with everybody, it was actually in person. So we know that was before 2020. It was, I think, back in 2018. And at that time, I think the board was entirely different. So I know that Erica and Mike are new. You guys were just sworn in, I think, recently. Is that correct? Okay. Yep. And I met you at a table up at WASDA conference, and I met Kyle there, I think. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and then that's the first time I met you too. And then Mary and Sherry and Mike, other Mike, I've been able to be with you, but you three have also been on 3 years or less. Is that correct? Okay, that's what I thought. So, yeah. So, as you know, as Chris has said, I served on the Kelso board for about 14 years, and then went to the State Board of Education. And our board's a little bigger, but we're in the position right now where we'll be swearing in 3 new members, and that means we're going to have 5 members, and then both our student reps that we've never seen in person. We've never physically been in the same room as they are. And so it's a challenge, and we try our best to, fortunately we're a good team, but it's that human element is really hard, and learning how to read each other and work off of each other is challenging in squares this big on a 2-dimensional screen. So I wanted to kind of cover a little bit, we'll review a little bit today of what we did before, mostly so Erica and Mike can kind of get caught up. But if you guys were at WASDA conference, you probably got a lot of it there. And so I'm going to go over really quickly a bit of it, and I will then also share the resources with it. So I think, are you able to see my screen there? Okay, I am going to make you guys bigger so I can see you and my screen at the same time. So like I said, I was going to do a quick review of what we had done last time we were together. Kind of the theme was theory into action, because it all sounds nice and easy on paper, but actually implementing it sometimes a little bit harder. Last time we were together, we also spent time on open public meetings and legal responsibilities, and I won't be covering that at all today, but just a quick review of our board roles and responsibilities and board standards, and then operating principles, which are yours, which are your document, which is policy 1600 in Arlington's policies. And that's really a good foundation that you already have in place for teaming. And I was going to kind of riff off of that for this evening. So with that, as you know, everybody's been on multiple teams, sports teams, teams at school, teams at work, whatever. And it's always good to check in, because we kind of know the basic rules for being good team members, but every team is unique and different. And so it's always good at the beginning of any new team. And anytime you get one new team member, you got a new team. It's always good to check in and just make sure that you have common understanding and what you're doing together, and get to know each other. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is getting to know each other. So this evening, I was going to go ahead and introduce you to the team after we do some review of board roles and responsibilities. But the focus of the evening is going to be on building your team, the new leadership team, and we'll be basing this work on your operation policy, or your operating principles policy, which is 1600. So as a review from the last time we met, one of the biggest things we had from our last meeting was talking about how one of the tenets of a strong team is our commonalities, as in common purpose, common understanding, common foundation, communications. Communications is huge on this. And I'm going to warm up with an easy question, although sometimes it's hard to define. You could put it in the chat if you want, or blurt it out. But what is your common purpose and your common commitment? You could use your chat or unmute and just let me know. I'll call on somebody. I'll pick on the president.
I would say probably educating children.
Okay, so look at the rest of you. Do I see head nods? You might want to nuance it or change it. But the big point is, does anybody disagree? Is it even more like educating Arlington kids, or meeting our community needs for our kids? I mean, it's about the kids, and we all know this, and we say this a lot. So that's our common purpose, and that's what we're coming together with, and that's your common understanding. So, but our understanding for how we do this is our roles and responsibilities, which I know are going to be newer to Mike and Erica. And then our common foundation are the standards, which we operate off of, which is the same foundation that you use for school standards and learning standards. Everybody has standards, and we hold ourselves to our own standards on this. But I noticed I did not say common agreement. So we're a team, you're a board team, you're stronger together as a team, but that doesn't mean that you guys are lockstep on everything. Sometimes people feel that when they come in from WASDA, we're trying to get everybody to agree, and that's not it. You guys are stronger because of your diversity and your differences, but what you do need to have is a common purpose, a common goal, and an agreed way on working together. It's because when you have that, then you can weather the differences. You can weather your disagreements, and you can weather what makes you strong by having different views on this. So yes, you can have differences of opinion, and when you are united in what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it, then you can work through it together as a team, and that's the best way to serve your community. So those were a little bit of a review. I'm going to go a little bit more. I don't know, this might be newer to Erica and Mike. Mike R, I think it is. So one of our common foundations or common understanding is, what is your role as a member of a governance board? So hint, the answer was in the question I just asked, and it's also at the top of the slide. So that is governance, right? So the graphic here, though, is rather simple. I would say it's black and white, but it's actually blue and white. But it looks so easy, and it's just like spelled out for you. I'm going to give you an easy example of how we used this when I was in Kelso. As a board member, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, we would go through at a board meeting, and we were getting evaluations and reports from our superintendent, who had already processed these reports and brought them up to us. And we worked with the superintendent. So that's why we're kind of in that nuanced, cloudy area in the middle, because we're working with the superintendent. One of the reports we were getting was our math scores weren't where we wanted for our kids. This was probably 10, 15 years ago. And we're working with the superintendent and deciding they weren't where we wanted, and what were we going to do about it. We set a goal. And I honestly can't remember what our goal was, but it was like, all third graders will be at X reading level. So we had set a goal for what we wanted to have for our students, and how we were going to do that. We put in a math strategic plan and created a plan in place. We worked with superintendent, with administrators, and we worked with community members on this. And then the board members kind of stepped back out a little bit more while we implemented it. And this is yet a strategic plan. Actually, I was on the committee that did the action plans and the strategic plans. But then when it came down to implementing it and putting it into operations, I'm totally back out of it. And this is back in the schools, and it's up to our principals and administrators to implement this plan. We get in and start to implement the plan and find out we don't have enough money to buy the math curriculum. So we jump back up and get a report from the superintendent. We go look at our goal. Is that still our goal? Yes, it is. This is still what we want to do. We go back and look at the plan. We decide we need to tweak it. We go back and check. This is not a circular thing. We're jumping all over the place. But the point was having us on our goal, getting reports from the superintendent, and then having a plan or a policy and sticking in place on that was the cycle how we worked with, and we stepped back out of operations. This is actually the same thing you use on as simple as a policy. So I heard tonight that you have a policy that is on 5th reading. Not sure what it is, but I bet you through this cycle a few times just with that. So I'm gathering that there's a purpose of this policy, that you've had a report and an evaluation from the superintendent, you cycled back on it, and when you get done, eventually you're going to implement the policy, and that's going to go into operations in your district. That's kind of another example of how this works. This isn't always that simple. Take, I don't know, curriculum, for example, nothing controversial around that. But this is, again, how you work this through. But sticking to this policy and remembering where we are and where our role is, it helps us keep focused on what we're doing. So anyway, our domain is governance, and administration is management and administration. This is another way of looking at it, and this is something that will probably be familiar to you. It's a pretty common document, and it's also in your operating principles. I kind of wanted you to focus on the very first line, and that is, it's what we just covered. We are, what I always said, we're the what, and our superintendent and administrators are the how. Our what needs to be specific enough to prioritize our community values and our common purpose, without being restrictive enough that it limits the superintendent and their team from getting their work done. That's not always easy to do. A perfect example of that was what we were already talking about tonight, and I heard, with school safety. School safety before 2019 meant different things. School safety when we were kids was different in terms of physical. I mean, we didn't have locked doors at all of our schools before. So this is not always easy, but it can have different meaning for folks too. But keeping our roles straight and clear is a good way for us to focus on what we need to do, keeping our roles focused, and then we're able to work a little bit better on this. So we want to keep our kids safe and learning in school. We know that's our common objective and our common purpose. And if we keep that at the forefront, it's a lot easier to work through our roles together. So that's really the purpose of tonight, is to create a strong team that's strong enough to work out and weather the challenges of figuring out the what and the how, and how we're going to do this. So again, I'll be handing this off to you guys later tonight. I'm going to take a few notes on it, which is why I didn't send it ahead of time. And on it are the links, and this is the link to your policy 1600 in your own board docs. But you can go ahead and read through this and see how this works throughout. So one other foundational piece, and then we'll wrap this up pretty quickly, is our for solid board work is board standards. And just as we have learning standards for our students and standards by which we hold the superintendent and evaluate our teachers on, it's pretty good for us to also have standards for us to hold ourselves accountable to, and by which our community can hold ourselves accountable to. So if you've been at the conference, I know that you probably saw some of WASDA's board standards. And for Mike and Erica, I would highly recommend you get a physical copy of it. I've got a few that are all marked all over the place. It helps me keep focus too. And it's a good way for you to keep reviewing them. I'll go walk them in a minute. These are board standards, meaning for the whole board team. On the very back page are individual standards, and these are recommended. These are just like guidelines. Everybody has to set their own standard for, ethical behavior, leadership, communications, that sort of thing. But the back page does have individual standards. So I like to tell folks when we do this that on these board standards, it's overwhelming the work you have to do as a school board member, but you really only have one job. And that is the second one here, communicating and setting high expectations. So that is that's our goal. We're setting the vision, the strategic plan, the direction of the school district. We do that with our one tool, which is governance and policy setting. But in order for this vision to be successful, we need to make sure we're part of creating the conditions that the district can be successful with. And that means setting and passing the budget, hiring a great superintendent, passing levies and bonds, and putting policies in place to operate. And once that's done, which good thing they've already got that in place, hopefully, and you need to maintain it. Once those conditions have been set, then our job is to hold the system accountable. And that's a big job. And we do that through annual superintendent evaluations, report on student learning and student progress. Our own evaluation is another way to do it. And we're accountable to ourselves and to our community. And while we're doing these things, the whole time we're engaging with the community in this process. So the board standards are set up to be used as a tool in that they're set by asking questions. You can use them as year round. They're not meant to be marched through. You just don't pick them up and start picking them off. If you do a board evaluation that comes from WASDA, they're also based on the board standards. So when you get your evaluation back, you can kind of see where you guys are rock stars and where you have more room for growth. And that
Whoops.
I think Patty's frozen.
Uh-oh. She might have lost connection. That happened to me in a meeting today where I got frozen and I had lost connection. So she might have to go out and come back in.
Yeah, maybe. And I don't know, is it confusing that there's two mics now?
Well, I maybe.
Might get confusing.
Well, are you proposing to change your name, Mike? No.
Well, I'm happy to do whatever is more convenient. So certainly Michael is fine if I want to change it to that, or Mr. Ray is a little bit too formal, but anyways, I can't change it on the screen.
I was kind of thinking about changing my name to Mike. I kind of like it.
Oh, nice. Nice.
What if you just added your last name so we could see that it's Mike Ray and Mike Kingman?
Yeah, that might be helpful. Just
somebody has permissions to do that. You're
I can rename you
to do that.
Just a minute. I can rename you. I will put your last name. I should rename all of you Mike, but there's Mike Ray.
Oh my goodness, that would be very confusing.
Okay, well, we're just
I'll try to log in as Michael from now on, if that's okay. Unless Mike Kingman wants to do that, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I can go either way, Mike or Michael. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know. Oh, here she comes. Okay, she's coming back. Welcome back.
Well, sorry about that. I think my internet crashed, but I am so fortunate that now that one benefit of being in the pandemic is I was issued a hotspot from work. So I was able to jump back on that. So anyway, apologies for that. I live in a fairly rural area too. So Anyway, I'll just close up with this last one. And I saying that the board standards are sent to be meant with questions that you ask. And some of the questions is like, does the board regularly monitor the budget and fiscal status of the district? Does it align with your vision? So I like how the tool is set up because it asks you questions which you can talk about as a board and work your way through. And I remember when I was on our board, we would sometimes, every board member took a different standard and we kind of sit back and observe, and at the end of 3 months, we kind of report back and say like, yeah, we did really well on this standard. And each person is kind of a way to keep it at the forefront and thinking about it and just keeping your mind on it, because sometimes the best way to do it is just be thinking about it. So
Yeah.
anyway, and you can see my screen again, is that correct?
I know you'll need to reshare it.
Oops, sorry about that. Let me do that again. Sorry. Here we go. Okay. Now can you see my screen again?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I am going to jump back up here then to team building, and that's what I really want to do in 2022. So a bit of a shift from roles and responsibilities to teaming, and to be specific leadership teaming in the 2020s. So I'm going to ask a question. You can either shout it out or go ahead and put it in chat if that works for you as well. Let me make sure I can see the chat box here. But I'm going to ask, considering the roles and responsibilities of the board and your purpose, what are some distractions that the boards are facing in 2020s? And by distractions, I mean, what's keeping you from focusing on your responsibilities of solely that are student achievement and academic outcomes? So before this, we were really laser-like focused on student outcomes and achievement. And
for me, Patty, it's
Patty?
oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Mike.
Sorry about that. I don't know if it's me or everybody else, but I cannot chat. It says it's disabled.
Oops. Okay. I'm not sure if I can control that, but
Let me see if it works for me.
Oh, I think it's working now. I don't know.
I think it
Somebody
is,
changed
yes.
something.
Yeah, it's working now.
okay, great. Crisis control, man, you said it.
That's for me. Yeah, I think for me, we still are motivated and driven to be here for the student learning and achievement. But in the same sense, you can't do that when when you have to take care of the basic needs of being healthy and safe, and kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People need to feel safe and protected and taken care of before they can move up that, to the higher level.
Shortages too, Mary. I remember I thought we had staff shortages and teacher shortages before. That's laughable now considering what we're dealing with, bus drivers and everything. But with some others, I remember when we went into this immediately, one of our first things was feeding our kids. Just getting them food. We used our buses to deliver food since the kids weren't at school back in 2019. And when did we think we'd be using buses to deliver kids or homework packets? They weren't used for kids. They were used for delivering homework and food. Yeah. So I've seen some things here. What has this done to leadership teams? Have you seen a change in some of the teaming and the cohesiveness? Have you seen it challenged a little bit?
Patty,
Even not with you, but just overall, yeah.
Patty, I was just going to say, it seems to me like there's a lot of individuality. I think we're all kind of, even like Dr. Sweeting was saying, like on the hierarchy of needs, we're kind of all at that base level of, kind of survival, like thinking about your own family, how you're going to get through and your struggles and how that relates. It's like everything else is secondary, I don't know. It's just, it's definitely different than I would have anticipated ever experiencing a board position because there's just so much on the plate right now that's so different than previous boards have had to contend with.
Yeah, I think in my day job, I work in an educational research and lab, and we do a lot of trauma-informed and secondary trauma-informed practices for helping teachers deal with trauma. And this is going back to that whole hypothalamus in the brain and fight, flight, or freeze. And we're in the middle of this crisis, as you said. We often, creativity, we lose the ability to be creative sometimes. It's just like, I remember the beginning, people were thought, oh, I'm going to go quarantine and write the next great American novel. This is going to be great. And dang, sometimes it's hard picking out which shoes I'm going to wear for the day. I mean, you just don't have that capacity because there's so much when you're worried about your family, protecting them, finding food, job security for some. And it is just this, it goes back to that flight, fight, or freeze in some aspects. And you don't think of it that way when you're out around town, but when you pause before you go someplace, if you're like checking for a mask, why is that? That's for your safety, right? And people handle that differently, and everybody takes that differently. And for some people, it's more threatening than it is for others. And that is it's a real challenge as we work together on boards, because everybody is so different on how they cope with it too. So let me see what else is in the chat here too. Yeah. And decision fatigue. Oh my God. That's what I said I wanted for Mother's Day. I don't want to make a single decision. That was my Mother's Day gift. I don't want to make one decision. So please, that's all I want. So yeah, it's a challenge sometimes. But so this is teaming with 5 different people with different ideas can be challenging in good times, and it can be even more so on hard times. So getting together and just talking is one good thing. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to kind of switch off on this and take some notes. While I switch off here, I'm going to ask you to think of a team that you've been on. Anything. It can be back in high school. It can be your church. Just think of a team, identify the team, and the team needs to be a successful one. So it was one you're proud to be on. So it could be work, even if it's like a project that you were assigned at work. Something as a successful team that was a successful team. And what I'm going to do is take some notes now of some of the traits that are from a successful team. So either shout them out or put them in chat. But once you have your successful team in mind, what stood out of that team that your maybe less than successful teams didn't have? Okay.
Well, I'm going to be able to talk faster than chat. Certainly, a common goal. So, and then with the common goal, the sacrifice that the individual team members are willing to make in order to achieve that goal, along with the diversity, right? The differences of the team, and everybody's kind of willing to step up in an area of expertise, and essentially nobody feels the need to, be necessarily the leader or, be rewarded as such. Like, we're all in it together. Everybody's participatory, right? You're better at that. Well, that's great. Go do that. I'm better at this, or this suits me better. And it's all in a matter to the same common goal to, have a better whatever it was we were dealing with. In this case, it was at work, but yeah.
So are there some more there that? And you can still see this, correct? Yeah, I like that one.
I think what for me is that I think of a couple of teams that we have here in the district where we can, and like the fun goes with this, but being able to laugh together, but also be able to be ourselves and be transparent, and just share where we're at without judgment, so that then we can move forward and work on solving some problems and challenges.
You guys are making this easy for me. The last slide on this is going to be, I'm pegging some of these that are foundational for team building. And which is like, we already know this, and we're not creating this today, but there is the accountability, the safe, the trust, and so you are identifying, that's the point of today, is for you to identify these traits of a successful team together. So I'm seeing the collaboration, the growth mindset, the trust, the accountability, the common commitment, and these are all pretty common. So looking at this now too, how have these been challenged during some of the things we've talked about, when instead of focusing on students' well-being and individual success and kids fulfilling their potential, you're working on crisis control and just divisions and distractions and shortages of staff and shortages of supplies. I'm looking at this as like, is this one's here? Even this. Is that one's there? And this. When everybody has a different idea of what safety is for their kids. You all want your kids and staff to be safe. There's no question there, right? But what does that mean? And I mean, we've seen it, fortunately, not as much in our areas, but that's been a challenge nationwide in places too. So
Well,
a
and
lot
the
of
dynamic nature of this, right? I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
ever changing. I mean, like Mrs. HB Carey said in the beginning, right? We're not focusing as much on education as she would like to, right? I mean, that's certainly the focus of her position there, and we can't make. I mean, we're not. I don't feel that we're making big leaps or bounds in how effective education we're doing. Certainly. Over the last 2 years, we've certainly changed some things, right? Some things are better potentially, or have the potential for growth in the future, right? I mean, the remote learning and Chromebooks for everybody, all those things I think will be a benefit, but it's just, we're putting out fires, and the problem is it's a different one every day, right? It's get vaccinated and then we won't have to wear a mask, or, and it keeps going on and on and on, and it's ever changing. And we're educators here, right? All the professionals are, and it's kind of hard to focus on doing that job when you're doing, safety control the whole time, and it's hard to get ahead. And I'm sure it's hard to feel valued and good about what you're doing. I mean, yeah, we're doing a great job of keeping people safe, but and we're doing the best job we ever could of educating everybody. But dare I say that, I mean, we're certainly not doing the best job of education as we know we can do with, take away the pandemic. Like, we would be doing a much better job if we didn't have to deal with mask wearing and hand sanitizing and cleaning and staff shortages and all those things, right? That are highly important, and we're doing an awesome job and everybody's doing great, but it's a challenge to keep up and move ahead.
Well, and then when you do focus on student achievement and student learning, how do you look at that? You look at their test scores often. How's that going for you? I mean, and the state board, we just got them in, is like, yeah. And we compare it to what? We compare growth to previous years. We compare it to DV. You can't compare this to, I mean, we don't have data from 1918, right? We can't compare this to anything that we've had. And as we've talked about growth mindset, and it's about, kids growing and making progress, and how can we show that when honestly, sometimes we've talked about this a lot at the state board, what these kids have accomplished during the pandemic, that is amazing. And they need to be applauded and recognized for that. Just whether it's their how they coped, how they survived. And do we recognize that as growth?
Patty, I was just going to add too that I find that as we said, I feel very like multitasking or kind of torn because we're having our own personal lives impacted by the pandemic. And then we're meeting together and trying to cohesively move forward with policies, procedures, decisions. And I don't know, it feels like my attention, it feels I'm very diverted. And I know myself, I'm not putting my 100% into this role because I do have these competing places where my mind goes. And so in that regard, I don't know, that's hard for me because I feel like I'm not being the best I want to be. And that's a challenge for me.
And I know people mean well when they say, be kind to yourself, take time for yourself. And you want to go, are you freaking kidding? Do you think if I could, I would? I mean, like, I've got kids to feed, I've got this to do. And it's like, of course I would if I could. But when you're in crisis management, sometimes you're doing the best you can. And so, and I think that we always forget how it impacts everybody individually. I mean, Mike said you've lost coworkers, you know, you don't know that when you walk into a board meeting, what their day at work was like. You know, you don't know how that's been impacted. You see what's on a 2-inch screen in front of you. And so that's huge. One of the other things I was going to do on this was these are like highly effective, you know, these are successful teams. If you think about some of the things of traits of non-successful teams, you know, chaos, conflict, not common goal, those go back to a lot of the things that we were talking about earlier. The crisis creates chaos. It creates a lack of cohesion. It makes communication. How challenging was communications still when the information keeps changing every week? Like, right? What's the mandate this week? I mean, what is it? How can you have consistent communications, which is a pretty important part of a successful team, when it keeps changing all the time? So what I want to do here is to let you guys recognize that what you're doing is phenomenal and that the pieces that we're dealing with right now are almost set up for a non-successful team, but we know what we need to do right here. So I'm going to go back, and next one is I'm going to jump to your operating principles. You've got a great document in place already, and you can pull that up, but this is from the very beginning. Your operating principles define roles, responsibilities, norms, and methods of working together to assure quality operations, and leaders agree on the basic way of working together. These were created during a time of non-crisis, which is why you have them. So in a time of crisis, you can you have some place to go back to. That sentence in the blue is actually referring to the superintendent and the leadership team. So, and that's what they meant. The roles of each are necessarily different, but the primary mission of educating, preparing, and inspiring students to graduate and seek their full potential as lifelong learners is the main purpose. And sometimes in my work, I have my mission, like I have a post-it on my window right in front of me. Sometimes I just need that to keep me focused and having something that simple. So what are these norms that you talked about? Well, these are the norms from your operating principles. And I really like them. I wish that we could kind of take them outside of Arlington. Or, I mean, a lot of school districts have them, but we forget to use them and apply them in life, you know? So some of the stuff we've talked about tonight already, the first two are pretty big. My favorite one though is be kinder than necessary. Because if there's ever a need for that right now, I think it's that. But again, being fully present and engaged, like Sherry, you just said, that's hard to do sometime. And that's a norm, but it's not that simple all the time now. So, and being prepared, it's like being prepared for what? You show up from a meeting and then all of a sudden, guess what? The agenda's thrown out the door because you've got to deal with something else that just popped up. I mean, I know you've had board meetings like this where something has popped up and you've had to shift on the spot. So like I said, this all kind of sounds great and simple, pretty easy to follow, but it's kind of like IKEA furniture. You know, you got these pictures, you just put it together. It's really easy, right? But sometimes actually implementing it and doing it is a little more challenging. And that's what I wanted to kind of open up a little bit more with you guys on how can we do this right now? And this is where it needs to be Arlington School Board and how you talk. I can share some things that I've gone through and some suggestions, but again, your operating principles are in place here. And this is a good place to start. And then I'm going to ask some questions again and get you guys talking. So sometimes, especially now, these are pretty straightforward. For me, some of them are pretty easy, like maintaining confidentiality. Focusing on discussions on issues and not personalities. That is normally pretty easy, other than maybe when you got a bunch of people angry in the crowd and then people are upset and they make it personal. But this is where the common purpose, the roles and responsibilities and understanding those and being able to focus on your board standards can keep centering you to going back to this. So I was going to write again, let's see if I can do this. Some notes here, and I'm just going to ask some questions for you and find out how you've dealt with these in other areas. So this is like, how do you find the courage to speak up and not make this personal? So telling someone you disagree on a topic is pretty easy. It's often too easy these days, but stating it in a way that doesn't sound like a judgment can be more difficult. So, you know, there's things that I've learned, like, you know, it's tone and volume. Sometimes making eye contact and making it personal makes it less personal, if that makes sense. But when you have to deliver or have a courageous conversation, what are some things that you think have helped with you in the past? Whether it's think of a difficult conversations you've had to have, whether it's with a family member on making health decisions or a decision on a job or telling somebody at work that, you know, anything that's different. But let me see if I can get this in, and let's see if I can, there we go. What is a way of coping or helping be courageous when you speak?
Patty, I was going to say one thing that you can affirm what someone has stated so that they know that they've been heard by you, and just acknowledge that and just say, I have a different thought, a different opinion, but acknowledging that I think is very important initially. And then maybe stating how you differ in your idea. And yeah, just I think that's just and just be as authentic as you can in your reasoning. And then by doing that, I think you're going to help make it not personal, but just that you have a different opinion on the issue and you're just expressing discourse.
Yeah. For me, another thing that's been challenging is, and I can think of a time when a board member up here was talking about something, and it came across the way she delivered it was painful. And then it was hard to separate the message from the fact that I felt like it was a personal attack. How do I say that in a meeting? I'm not going to say, I mean, like, that's hard in the board meeting to say, hey, you hurt me the way you said that. You just said I wasn't prepared, and I was prepared. Just because I show, you know, I don't bring in a pack of papers with me, but I was prepared. How do you do that? I mean, one thing I've, you know, I don't know if the praise in public, criticize in private, or address concerns in private. But how do you, often when people are hurt, that's harder to address in a meeting. And another way of thinking of this is, how do you disagree respectfully? I think some of you may have heard this story. When I was pretty new on our board, we had a pretty hot topic, and it was in the gymnasium because there were so many people there. It was standing room only. It was packed. There's people all over. It was something over really important. It was Sunday afternoon basketball practice. Kid you not. Anyway, the vote was 3-2, and I remember afterwards. I don't even remember if I was the 3 or the 2. But afterwards, the next night, one of the other board members called me and he said, Patty, you know, I didn't understand why you voted the way you did. And I'm going, uh-oh. And he said, and then I thought, if I don't understand the way she voted, she probably doesn't understand why I voted that way. So I'm just calling you because I want to let you know, help you understand why I voted that way and see if you have any questions. And that was like groundbreaking for me because I was pretty new, and I just right then knew, I know I'm a part of a great team. I know I'm going to go forward with this team, and if this is the respect and this is how we operate, this is going to be a good team and we can work through anything. But so how can you disagree? Sometimes it's hard to do it in a public setting. But that's what I think is. Sorry.
I think that it is harder to in a public setting, like you're saying. I'm really learning a lot about how to do that. I approach differences. I really try hard to be curious and to observe. And I guess it depends on the conversation, because sometimes stating the observation back, like this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing, and here's my thoughts and ideas. And it seems to work even if we disagree. We've both said our opinions, and that's okay to be different. You know, just like having the general agreement that we're going to disagree on some things.
Very much so, especially if you have that common agreement on how you work together and how you lean in on it, then you can weather the disagreements.
Yeah, to me, in our norms, when it talks about assuming positive intent, to me, that anchors in our why and our common ground. Always what our common ground, even if we're not agreeing in a situation of how or the what, our why is our constant. And that's what we assume. I mean, I remember when I was a principal, this was very much the way I approached, like if a parent was upset, when we would sit down, and same in this position, but the common ground is we are here to support that student and move forward. And we may both have a different opinion of what that looks like, but that conversation has to assume positive intent, that we're there for the child. We're both there. We just have to work through it. And sometimes the solution is different than what either of us had come up with, but that assuming positive intent is really important.
One more thing too that I usually think about is the differences in opinions is how I have learned a lot. You know, we can learn from each other.
Yes. And that is why it's a board of 5 and not a single person. And I see the end product, the final product is stronger. It's like it's been vetted by more people, which is, you know, why you go out and you hear from the community. Erica, you were talking about student voice. That's close to my heart too. You know, the more you hear, the more you vet it, the more angles you look at it. It's like a prism. You have so many different facets on it. You can see it different ways. So with a board, generally too, especially with poor Mike being muted, there's often there's a varying range of how comfortable people are talking. And Mike, you can't unmute yourself, I'm sorry, but you, how do you?
Yes, I can. I'm fixed.
Oh, okay, yay, good.
Both of us can.
Yeah, good. How do you find, this is always was challenging for me, especially in large meetings with a lot of crowds and stuff. How do you find the courage to speak up? Is that a challenge? And how do you make sure that all the voices on the board are heard? What I've seen sometimes is that if somebody doesn't feel comfortable or safe speaking, then they do it afterwards, after the meeting or inside conversations. And that's not really good. But creating a safe space for that everybody can, that's on everybody, and it's difficult, and everybody has different comfort zones. So how can you build the courage yourself, or how can you support your board peers to feel comfortable speaking in difficult conversations? One of the things that has helped me is I've thought of somebody. Often for me, it's been a really strong, fierce woman sometime for me, for a role model, and watched them in it and thought about how'd they do that? You know, how'd they do that? And what is it, you know, what didn't they do? Like, you know, how didn't they present themselves? How did they present themselves? And then I will sometimes try to think ahead of time. Like, most of the times, you know, if it's going to be a challenging night, and you can kind of think ahead. It's kind of like working with the media too. For those of you who had to be interviewed by radio, newspaper, stuff like that, you know your message, you know what is the message that you want to communicate, and being really clear on that before you go into the board meeting. That doesn't mean the danger of this is, though, people come in, they know what they're going to say, and they don't listen. And I've seen that so many times in public comment at board meetings, that if you've listened to the conversation, you'd see that maybe your issue's been addressed, or maybe this has happened, or maybe you might want to do a nuance. So you can't be like, this is what I'm going to say. You still have to listen, but knowing ahead of time what your intent and what messages you want, and then listening to the meeting, that sometimes helped. But let me see. So when you think about these challenges you have, I mean, I think there's a lot of good things here. But when you find, for some of you, you know, Mary and Mike, Ray and Sherry, you guys have had several board meetings under your belt now. Have there been things that have helped you speak up, pull together to address, or what are some of the things that you worry about and is working on, you would like to work on as a team? Like, I could use some support from my fellow board members helping me do this.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a problem. I don't see a problem speaking up. I mean, certainly, I don't feel like I have one. And I think everybody feels okay to state their position, as we have done many times over the last several months. Yeah, so I don't necessarily think that that's an issue for us necessarily. I mean, certainly perhaps the you know, over the Zoom remote of the understanding of the other person's position is, it just, at least for me, it's a lot more challenging when you're not in person. You don't have the inflections and everything else you get when you're in person, and it just makes it more challenging for sure.
I am with you. Sometimes for me, I can't tell how important it is to somebody on Zoom. Like, because you say it and you just say it, but you can't tell if it's like, yeah, or if it's like, no, they're like, you can see in their face, this is really important to them. And I really need to pay attention to this right now. It's harder to see that. So for Mike Ray and Sherry and Mary, how would you give advice to Erica and Mike coming in to make them feel comfortable and like, hey, welcome in? I mean, when I told that story about my expectations for the board, when the board member called me up and said, you know, I knew that this was a sort of board I was leaning into, and it was one that a welcome disagreement, and that it wasn't personal. It was, we're doing our best to work together to achieve our common goal, and that it's okay to disagree and that sort of thing. So do you have anything that you would say that you've done particularly well the last 18 months as a board team?
I have to say, Patty, from my perspective, what made the board different than it is now was that I personally knew Mary and Judy and Mike and it was our other person.
Mark.
I can't think of his name. Mark Rosen.
Mark.
So I had worked with them in various, whether it was ACE committee or the boosters at the high school. We knew kids, each other, you know, that familiarity made me feel comfortable. And now I have, I still know Mary, I still know Michael Ray. I don't know Erica and Mike on that same level. So one thing I know, I had reached out to Erica over the break and I said, hey, I should get, you know, we should get together for coffee or something just so I can introduce myself and meet you. And that didn't really go anywhere because our weather was impeded that. But I think that's what I would say is, I know for myself, it would help me to get to know Mike and Erica on a more personal level so that there's just, you know, mano a mano, there's some understanding. And I need to do that, because when we're in person here next week, that will help me not feel like cold feet. I will, when someone says something, I can say, okay. One of my professors last year in class I took for my degree was saying, build the relationship before you need it. And I have a feeling we're going to need that. I have a feeling that it's more important that we create some level of foundation with each other so that when we come together in that room at the BPAC, we will feel more unified. And even when there's discourse, there will be an appreciation for the other. So that really has to happen. And I'm going to blame that on COVID, that we can't have that social time, because when we had Mark and Judy retire from the board, we had a great dinner. And it was like, you know, I remember talking to Mike even at one get together, and it was somebody's birthday or something. And we were talking about bourbon and we were talking about whiskey, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I found a commonality with Michael Ray, you know, and it was funny to me that was some fluky conversation. But again, it was because it wasn't the board meeting. It was in a social setting. And I really appreciate that. So I would say that I think we should, you know, send each other like a little list of like 10 silly questions, and then have those people answer that, or something we can know each other a little bit. And even if it's a 10-minute phone call. And I will say, Michael Ray did reach out to me a while back, and we were trying to do that and had a hard time connecting, but that's what I think would be really impactful for us.
I know when I was on the board, one time I was the only one with kids in the school, but they had all had kids go through school, and some had grandkids in school. And it was so much fun for us to know each other through our kids and through the celebrations and the accomplishments and graduations and like, so how's your grandson's basketball team? And it was such a great thing, because it showed how different we were, because we were all at, you know, I had a 5-year-old and somebody else had a 35-year-old, you know, and we we're all at different stages. But oh my gosh, you all, right? How can you not celebrate each other's kids' success? And you know, that's why we're all doing it, right? Is for kids. And so that's been another way. And it's been hard during COVID. We couldn't do graduation parties, and we could, you know, that's been difficult. So that's a good thing here, Sherry. And as we start to open up, or if you need to go one-on-one more, or, you know, it's a snowshoe trip or something now, the weather the way it is. So, okay, well, I'm going to share something else now that I haven't used before, but I took it from my work when I was pulling together brand new as a leader in my organization and pulling together a leadership team. And this was a book. I didn't like the title of the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I really don't like deficit-based language. So I just say right there. So I liked this graphic of it. This is the book by Patrick Lencioni, because I like the gray is kind of the positives. But if we went back to the very beginning when we had talked about some of these, you'll see accountability. You'll see the growth mindset, the common goal, respectful participation. When you come back to here, I want to go over this. So this works from the top up, and that absence of trust. If you don't trust your co-workers, your board members, enough that they'll be confidential, that they won't mock me, they won't laugh at me if I share my secret passion or whatever, or they won't listen to me or value my ideas, then there's no way you're going to have the courage to speak up and disagree with them. And if you can't address openly conflict, if there's a fear of conflict as a team, you're not going to get past that stage to having that communal commitment, which is, we all have this purposes. So you need to be able to have the confidence to address people and speak up, and you can't do that until you have the trust of each other. And when you don't have the conflict, there's no common commitment. And if there's no common commitment, then the accountability, which is so important for making the system work, isn't going to be there. And then, I mean, without that, there's no inattention to results. So I've liked this. If you, I mean, the book is it's kind of a narrative. It's a short read. It's easy to do. But what I liked about this graphic on this is it kind of gives you solutions for how to make it a little more asset-based. So absence of trust. So how do you build trust as a team? Doing exactly what we were doing tonight, going first, Mike and Sherry and everybody sharing, being vulnerable. You do that. And once you're doing that, then that you trust somebody that you can disagree. You trust them. And so going first is a big one. Mining for conflict. That was something that is important. Like ask questions, like follow up. Sherry, you had some, which I noted on the other slide, is restate. Like, is this what you're, like explore a little, push a little bit. That's a good thing. Conflict is, that's merging of two rivers, right? It's a confluence. I mean, conflict is not a bad thing. It's just two opposing things, yin and yang, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But those are the good foundational pieces so that you can get in and have your focus, clarity, and your commitment, which you have already. It's in your operating principles. It's in your mission. I mean, it's right there. And then you guys are taking head-on accountability in different ways. But that again is through board standards. Accountability is you have multiple venues for that. Superintendent evaluation, your own evaluation, listening to the reports, holding the district accountable. That's where it really comes from. But you can't do that until you have the other steps in place. And then of course the pinnacle is your collective outcomes. Sometimes that's helped me as I focused on it. And I've even used this as my own leadership team, is we would each pick something. We pick a level that we're working on. And how are we? Find examples of that. Find examples of each other being vulnerable, and find examples of us being trusting. Find examples of how, hey, like Mary, I really liked how you questioned Mike on this because it brought an issue to a head that otherwise we wouldn't have even discussed. And with a new team, while the top is definitely where you're aiming for, I would suggest with the new team, focus on these bottom tiers. You got to do that first. And that's where you kind of focus in the beginning. And so with that, I think I wanted to share, when I send this to you also for Erica and Mike, there's a lot of resources here from other things here, but wanted to be respectful of your time. And I think that's about what we had. I save the notes on that and I'll send it to Chris. And so you can have that PowerPoint for your notes with that. And then my recommendation for you, because I always like to have an action come out of anything, is that I would like to recommend and hold you accountable for reviewing your operating principles. I think they're ones that you sign. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes.
And
Yes.
with new members, it would be a good thing. And I challenge you to not just sign them, but look at them and say, like, are these the norms we want? If I went back to that and let's see, share my screen again here. We will work to minimize understandings and reduce conflict. Do you want to add to that? Is there anything, your policy, you can change it. Is there anything missing? Is there anything you want to add to the nuance of it? I mean, I like your modeling district norms. I think those are great, but review them, at least review them and agree with them. Don't just sign off on them. It's a good chance to do this. Again, just like the board standards, when they're in the forefront of everybody's mind, that's half the battle, because that's how you agree to work together so that you can do the difficult work. And so that'd be my challenge in the next couple months, to review those at a board meeting, sign off on them, and just don't sign off on them. But I challenge especially Mike and Erica to read them ahead of time carefully. And if you have questions, bring them to Mike Ray and Sherry and Mary. And if you have questions, like, sometimes you read them carefully and he's like, oh, there's a story behind this one. Like, why is that in there? Learn from it, learn from it and see what it is. And so that would be my action item for you from this.
Patty, thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments? Just always.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Patty, and sharing all this great wealth of information. I did get a chance to study that 5 Dysfunctions book for my last semester of classes, and it was fascinating. And I'm with you. I don't like the negative, but I like the story, and I like the lessons it taught. And I did think about our school board when I was reading it, and I thought about a lot of the different situations and struggles that we've gone through, and how it's been such an emotional roller coaster for the last couple of years. And I have a couple questions. I was hoping that you could maybe answer or explain. I want us to become a cohesive team very much, and I want us to get to know each other and build those trust relationships and be able to understand each other's backgrounds and our hopes and our goals, and just really know each other. But I don't know how much we're allowed to do that, since all of our meetings are in public, recorded on YouTube. It's not always like the most safe and welcoming and fun sort of situation. And I want to know, how much are we allowed to communicate in person, in real life? Like, I know we can't meet as a quorum without being in a board meeting that's publicized and all the things with the open public meetings. But can we have little side conversations? Can I call up each board member and chat with them once a month and see how they're doing? How does that work?
Yeah, it works very delicately. You have to be very careful. In fact, we're, as a state board, tomorrow I'll be going through my open public meetings record training. At the beginning, you can join us, or you can see the PowerPoint we have. So yes, you can. You have to be very careful when you do this, that there's no business of the board is conducted. And business of the board means action, not action items, but it's discussions. And so doing the thing where, even if you're after a board meeting and you're walking out to the cars and you're having like, how'd the basketball game last night? Or, oh, I like knitting too. That sort of stuff is totally fine. Those conversations you had when you went in the van to the WASDA regional meeting and you're just checking up, That is still totally fine. You just need to be very careful that you're not talking about board business. So Mary, if you're going to check in with people, that's great. You need to make sure you can update them on, like, do you have any questions on the board meeting? You need to make sure that you're not doing anything that would conduct a quote serial meeting. In terms of, if you talk to Mike, so what did you think of Chris's presentation? Did you have any concerns? And then you went and talked to Sherry and said, what did you think about Chris's presentation? You just had, like, there's a quorum right there. You were doing something that was, business of the board. So be very clear that you don't do any business of the board, but that you can still, and I know it's difficult on a Zoom setting, do things that are fun. You do have open public records, so that's hard to do. But there's sometimes, which I've seen is fun, is do an event in which you share a success from a kid's. I don't know if you're going to be meeting in public soon or not, but have the elementary kids demonstrate something fun and make it intimate and small, and it's hands-on, and you can do something that it's not like work of the board, but it's more of a fun activity together. When are you guys going to be
Funny
having?
that you mentioned that, Patty, because we're meeting back in person starting on Monday in 6 days.
Okay.
And our action item tonight, our 5th reading, is our board meeting policy about where we have meetings.
So it sounds like a great night. I wouldn't suggest bourbon, but I would suggest maybe ice cream social afterwards. If you can do that safely and feel comfortable with that. I know that it was before and after, when you're walking into meetings and like, how's it going? Did the flooding hit you? How is the house? That sort of thing. But if there's a way that you can gather together, we used to have, often we'd have dinner ahead of time when we had longer meetings, and we come in about a half an hour early to have dinner. If you guys feel you can safely spread out and do that, but having a celebration that you guys are back together in person, and that's going to be something that would be up to your comfort levels, or outside. But do something to celebrate that you're coming together next Monday. You should toast of sparkling cider or something.
Well, guess what? There will be something very special there, because on the 24th, we are honoring the board. It is their board appreciation special evening. And so there will be something very special taking place, but we could certainly do something afterwards too, if the board so would like to. But there is going to be something special at and during the board meeting.
January is the best month, but anyway, but also don't be afraid to rush out afterwards. I have to let you know, you need to read your community, and where they are. We had a large board in the Seattle area once that had a meeting, and after the meeting, a few of them walked across the street and went to a little restaurant and had a drink together, and the media was there, and they got turned in for violating Open Public Meetings Act. They didn't. It was fine. They went out and had a drink as friends, and there's nothing wrong with that. And they were totally fine. It was all good. But you need to have a good pulse on your community, and the appearances are everything. And it's pretty obvious if you guys are sitting together cheering on the basketball team together, or if you're celebrating Board Appreciation Month with a toast or recognizing your kids. It's pretty obvious that you guys are not doing anything nefarious of board action. But I would recommend you do something to celebrate your new team together and celebrate your new in-person meeting.
Sounds good. We also have some fun times even during the day when we have student voices. We don't have a quorum, but we do have board members that will come, and that's fun. So, and we're doing I think Erica and Mike, we've got scheduled on the 25th of January this month. We're going to do visits to 4 schools, and that's going to be lots of fun. And done that with other board members as well, but those will be fun things. But the 24th is going to be great celebration in many, many ways. So
We have to make sure our board meetings are over before 10 o'clock if we're going to do something afterwards.
I hope it's
That might
over
get a
by
little
10.
lengthy.
What?
We've gone past 10.
Oh, okay.
Why does everything, why do you say that, Mike? There's nothing open after 10 o'clock or? I don't know what you're
It
talking
just
about.
gets, it's just getting close to the witching hour at 10 o'clock. And, you know,
Oh.
I mean, a lot of us have to work the next day and, you know, it's just getting late. I was more trying to be fun and hopefully lighten up that hopefully our meeting was shorter, as Mary, I'm sure remembers. I don't recall an in-person meeting that went much longer than an hour. Granted, there were only a couple of them, but they were pretty short. I do remember that. So hopefully that's we can consolidate.
Yeah. Did you have another question, Mary? Yeah, no, and I'm with Mike, you know, 2 hours is probably good. And if you that's other than like workshops, retreats, you know, that sort of thing. But a standard business meeting you should be able to keep that short. Celebration part afterwards, though. Hey. Okay. Well, I will email this to Chris as soon as I jump off, and she can go ahead and send it to you just for the resources and then the comments there, and then use the comments that I took the notes on here and use those and review those before you go over your operating principles as a team, and put that on your agenda in the next month or two. And I honestly, just watching you guys tonight, you got it. I know you do. So I'm very confident in this team here. So
Thanks, Patty. I am too. We're together in this. We're moving forward. And I appreciate you, Patty, so much. So thank you. And we'll call upon you again. And just thank you for giving us this time and for planning and prepping for it as well.
well, thank you, because I often think about it. I didn't have to deal with this as a local board member, and I admire you guys for doing this. I know what I'm dealing with in other aspects of my life, and I just keep thinking about it. So thanks. It's unsung heroes like so many other areas, but thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So
Thank you, Patty.
great.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
President Levesque, I think according to the agenda, it's time for a brief break. If you're would
I
like to
think
lead
that's
us.
a great idea. It was scheduled to be a 10-minute break. Do you want to make it a little shorter so we stay on schedule?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm open to either 5 or 10 minutes. I think we can.
How about a 5-minute break and we come back at 7:46? Does that sound good to everybody?
Sounds good.
Okay. Is everybody back yet?
Was saying goodbye to my kiddos. They're heading back to UW tonight. So like,
Aw,
so
good thing
like,
they're
okay.
close.
Oh, super close. Yeah. Close and far away at the same time.
All right, is everybody else back?
Checking. I think so, Mary.
All right. Well, the next part of our agenda is our work together with intentionality, design, and accountability. And we're going to talk about our strategic plan and data tools. So well, go for it. Dr.
All
Silver.
right. All right. So this next part, we're going to just become again more familiar with our map and our plan and some of the tools that we use to measure the results and our progress. We're going to dig more into that in February at the next study session. Tonight, I'm just going to give more of an overview, probably about 8:15 or 8:20, then stop so we can take time to review policy 1400. So first, we have our strategic plan that is our why, or it describes our why, which is our mission, that we educate and prepare and inspire each student, just as Patty stated, and she stated so eloquently. So it is our what. It is in our plan, and Patty already shared the district norms, but it is within our strategic plan, these norms. And so that document, that map lays this out. This is a designed, it says in the board plate that this we've had a strategic plan throughout our history, but it's been revised over time. And we did do that in 2017. We pulled together a committee of the ACE Committee Plus, we called it, because it was more than just the ACE Committee. We invited higher education representatives, business representatives, and more to join that group for a year. And we hired a consultant to come in and lead us through a process of where are we? What are our strengths? What are our areas of needs? And where do we want to go and where do we want to be? What's our mission? What's our vision? And so we went through that process, and in the strategic plan has been revised along the way, but the core foundation has remained and the district norms are within that. It also, and this initially, we didn't have this at least stated in the strategic plan. It was assumed and it was embedded, but it wasn't like in words. And so our strategic plan does state our values. These are the four values that are embedded and surround and are within the plan. So culture of equitable practices, which we have defined equity as removing barriers and increasing access to learning for each student. We also have a collective value of being responsible, and that it's everybody's responsibility, not just one, and that collectively we will get this done and we will meet our mission to educate, prepare, and inspire each student to graduate and be ready for their next step and their goals in their lives. We also value continuous improvement. This means that we have to be constantly looking and watching and monitoring and adjusting. If something's not working or it's just not going in the direction that we need to, we evaluate why. And if there's an adjustment that needs to be made, we do that. And we also value that this is done together collaboratively. This is a we. It's all of us. It is all of our staff and us in our roles in the our perceptions and perspectives that we bring and those things we bring to the community, and we work together, and we have a strong, the staff has been trained in professional learning communities. That is it's a way to approach our work, that we do it together. We look at, again, what's working, what's not, and where do we need to make adjustments. So the strategic plan is set up that it describes our mission, our values, and it has 4 goals. And then each of those 4 goals have metrics to measure, okay, in goal 1, how are we doing? If that's a goal, then how are we doing? So I'm going to call upon, this is just a design of, we're on a road, we have a map, and there's checkpoints along the way. And those checkpoints are those goals and the metrics that we're using to measure our progress towards those goals. And one of the things that was shared with me early on when I was hired, that we wanted to make sure that our goals were more measurable so that we could see our progress, and that we could put our finger on it and say, we're doing great here, we're making progress here, but not there. So I want to make sure they're measurable. So I am going to call upon the 3 veteran board members. This is easy, Mary. This is very easy. So all I would like you to do is explain, the 4 goals, and I've got this first one here. So someone will have to volunteer. Just tell in your own words what goal 1 is about. The next slide has what we use to measure it. So I'm going to leave it on this slide. So which one of you would like to talk about goal 1? What is it about, just in general? And you don't have to share details, but how would we measure that progress? Who would like to talk about goal 1 for just about 30 seconds?
I'll say something, but I don't know if it's the right thing to say. I think it's all about education and having those high expectations and student learning and growth and measuring their success.
That's right. That's right. And like it does say in here that it's about the learning, but if you notice in the second line, it talks about having successful transitions from grade to grade in order to graduate. So, when you look at it, we want the end is that we want every student to graduate and be ready for life and their next steps and whatever they want to pursue. But we do that by taking care of their transitions day to day, grade to grade, level to level, all of that. Some of the ways that we measure these are some of the metrics, and we've changed these along the way. And we're basing this on what we believe is important as a board. So not tonight, but I did, because this is just a foundational, just a revisit, is that we can add or change these metrics. We can say, I want to measure something more, or I want to measure something different. But graduation rates, that's important, I would think. If our mission is every student graduating, we want to know, are they graduating? Is every student graduating? If not, why? And student and staff perceptions about the learning that's taking place. Are they being engaged? Are they being challenged? And then these are some of the things that we measure as far as in numbers. So percentage of students that are making at least 1 year's growth. And this has been challenging during COVID. First of all, we don't have our standardized testing, but we have our iReady and our STAR testing that we will be sharing with you in February, the results of that. But we want every student to be making at least, and I say at least, 1 year's growth. And it's really important, at least research says, and I believe this, I've seen it when I have taught and been a principal at the elementary level, is that students need to be reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. That's essential. And so we got some creatures joining us. We got creatures. So anyway, so we measure that. We want to measure that and show where we're at. And we also believe that to have students to be on track, that they are completing their classes successfully. So we want to measure that. So the 8th grade students that are completing their courses, and then our 9th grade students are they on track to meet the 24 credits? So these are some metrics that we measure to see if we're making progress for goal 1. So who would like, I guess there's another page. So another thing is that we measure, we have the ability and the opportunity for students in 8th grade to earn high school credits. And we want to open that door for every student to be able to do that. And so we measure that. How many have earned high school credit in 8th grade before they even get to high school? And then we want to measure students earning college credit before they graduate from high school, and industry recognized certification and CTE completer courses. So we want to measure those to see how are we doing towards our goal of student learning and achievement. And finally, we felt it important that we measure how many students are accessing that high school and beyond plan. This is changed. It was initially Naviance, and now we have a different program, but it's basically preparing them for their future. You know, what are their interests? What are their career interests? And then what, if this is their interest, how do they align with what they're doing right now to prepare themselves for that? And so these are things that we measure right now in our strategic plan for goal 1. So goal 2, who would like to? So it's between Sherry and Mike, who wants to talk about goal 2, or Mary, because there's 4 goals. So somebody's going to be doing one extra one.
Oh, so when I look at goal 2, safe and caring environment, that, you know, they do, that we take the proactive approach of, you know, employing people, working with our teachers union, our classified and certificated people, understanding that we are in need of another middle school, that we will soon be in need of an additional elementary school based on the population and the expected growth. So I think that having that foresight and the planning necessary to accommodate our future growth for our student population, and understanding both the resources in terms of people and buildings, that we do what's necessary now so it will be there in the future. I would also add to that, being proactive in having community members participate in our bonds and levies, so that we can communicate that message to the public, and knowing that that's such a big part of what we need to have in order for our schools to function safe and well.
And Sherry, this wasn't meant to be a trick question, but back on the other page, it didn't even have the right goal statement. It had the goal statement for so I apologize for that, for the resource stewardship, but the goal for the goal statement for goal 2 is we will cultivate and maintain a safe and caring environment that supports a positive culture to increase student learning and achievement. So basically goal 2, 3, and 4 are very supportive in making sure goal 1 happens. It's to make sure student learning and achievement happens, you need a safe and caring environment. And the metrics that we use for goal 2 to show that we're making gains in creating a safe environment, physically, emotionally, mentally, is that we measure student and staff perceptions. We measure the number of in and out of school suspensions and expulsions. We measure harassment, intimidation, and bullying actions. We have systems where when there has been a situation, then the administrators log into this system and they put in what that incident was. We measure daily attendance rate, and it's been interesting over time, especially with COVID, and chronic absence rate, because we know if the kids are in school, there's a higher chance that they will be learning at higher levels. And that's why last year was so hard, because they were remote and it was just really hard. And that's why we're fighting so much to keep kids in school this year, even when we have to cancel a bus route, which was really aggravating, but trying to keep those doors open to in-person learning. And we're measuring registered visitors to our school, although that's, you know, been a challenge with COVID. To keep kids safe, we are required to conduct safety drills. Every school is required to conduct at least 9 throughout the year, so we measure that. And we also have the voices opportunities, the number of opportunities that students have that staff have, that community have to give their opinions and their thoughts and perceptions. So those are some of the metrics. Goal 3, which has the right statement, So I don't know, Mike, tell us about goal 3. It's about resource stewardship.
Yeah, resource stewardship. So, I mean, we do a great job, with HR and Eric's department, securing all the people, and Brian and his department, right, operationally, to support everything that we need to do to make it run. Obviously, it's been a significant challenge. Those two individuals are doing a quality job over the last 24 months or so of trying to keep up, but I gotta imagine they're just they feel at times like they're swimming upstream, right? No paddle and all that stuff. But so kudos to them and really and everybody, right? The supports them. We say that a lot, but it is a team effort. But it's great that we have those two individuals who were in place and operating before this happened, and they just keep on keeping on. They're just doing such a fantastic job of it. Yeah. So I think we're doing good at resource stewardship, right? And holding on to whatever we need to hold on to, securing stuff. Yeah, I'm sure our lack of bus drivers, right, isn't for the lack of not trying to get hire for them and doing everything we can, and the lack of tests or kind of shortage of tests isn't for the lack of not ordering enough. I mean, I'm sure Brian has ordered a warehouse full of them. They just haven't showed up yet.
Yep. No, Brian I will report he had he had many in his car today that he went and picked up. And Krista has some orders that we're waiting to hear. We heard that maybe one order has been shipped. We don't know when it'll come, but yes, I agree with you, Mike. And some of the metrics that we use for goal 3 within our strategic plan to measure our, progress towards that goal is we watch very carefully the level of our fund balance, but not that we have this high fund balance. We want to be able to use our money where the needs are. We want to be able to.
Oh, Gina does a great job at
Yes.
that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Gina, for not having you in there, because that's what makes it all. So allows Brian and Eric and everybody else do their job is all the money. Good job, Gina.
Thanks, Mike. And because the next one's audit, and Gina was a former audit person. She did auditing for the state. So we really benefit from her skill and knowledge in that area. So she's really leading us, and we're in a great spot, and I appreciate we have a great team, so good team. The next bullet says we allocate resources based on need using an equity lens. That equity lens is what is going to remove a barrier and what's going to increase access. How can we do that? And guess what? Not this last year, but the year before, we eliminated athletic fees. We felt that was getting in the way for people to have, for our students to have access. So those kinds of things. We're watching the cost of our utilities. We actually have done things. We've installed LED lights to save us money. We have various things across the district. We also measure and look in the staffing realm, evidence of staff diversity, evidence of staff retention. What's the educational level and experience of our teaching staff, and also the allocating resources based on equity lens. In other words, how do we allocate our staffing out to the buildings, and is it based on need? And we watch and monitor the staff that are earning professional development clock hours. So, and moving on to goal 4, which is our parent and community partnership. I don't know which board member wants to talk about this.
This is my favorite one.
Okay, well, there you go, Mary.
I think that this talks about all the things that we want to partner with our community on, how we're all in this together, that it's a team effort to raise these children and give them the best opportunity for success, that we need all hands on deck, literally, and we need all voices. We need to be able to hear all the different voices, even if they are disagreeing with us or disagreeing with each other, which seems to be the case sometimes, that we need to hear them, work with them, and all be in it together to help all of our families and community to be the best that they can be.
Thanks, Mary. And to measure that within our plan, we look at the number of partnerships that we have with our local community organizations. We look at again, our volunteers. We look at how many parents and community members do we have on our district committees, and the more is better. We want as many as we possibly can, and to have as broad of representation as we can across the system. We look and measure our school messenger communications, which have increased since we put this metric in our board strategic plan. This has increased over time. Thank you, Gary, for that. And also we measure our social media and video and website posts, which have increased as well, and our opportunity for district events like community voices and just activities. This has been a little bit harder to measure, but we want to find some way to do that. And then a new one that the board added recently, this was last year, was student community service hours. So these are ways, these are not the only way, but these are some of the ways that we have put in our strategic plan that we would measure our progress towards our goal. So I wanted to show you the next part of here is just I want you to be aware, if you're not already, of some tools that give you some data about those goal areas and the metrics. And again, in February, at the February study session, it's going to be all about progress towards the goal areas. You're going to see how we're doing. But before that time, you can actually dig in. Some are not all the way updated to even OSPI on their data site. It's not updated. Some of it's because we don't have the testing results. There was it's just not there yet. But on our district website, there is a data dashboard. I'm going to show it, I'm just wanting you to see where it's at. So you go to the district website and you'll click on, when you're on the main page, it's on the right side, you'll see it says district data dashboard. You click on there, and right here, it's got the 4 goals. And so, and then down below here for our public, it has a picture of our strategic plan, and it has why we have it. And you can actually go to each of the goals, click on it. And so for goal 1, there's all the metrics that we're paying attention to see how.
Are you on the data dashboard right now?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it. Are you wanting to share it?
Let's see, maybe I need to stop sharing it. Oh, okay, the link's not working. Let me stop sharing. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. Debbie's coming and giving me a tutorial in the middle of this. So let me get into, now I'm gonna share my, let me see if you can see this. Do you see it now, Mary?
I see it now.
For sure? Okay. Okay, so let me back up. So here's what it would look like once you've clicked onto the district's data dashboard link. You would open it up to this, and on the left-hand side here, it says plan goal 1, 2, 3, and 4, and other data. And so if I were to go to goal 1, then it lists those metrics that we are paying attention to and measuring for success. I'm just going to click on the graduation rates, just so you can see. You click on that, and Evelyn Modar, she is wonderful. She's helps keeps these up to date. It's a little bit challenging with COVID, but so when you click on the link, then it gives you the data right there. So this shows like 4-year and 5-year. It's got the class of 2020, so we need to get the class of 21 on there, but that's for goal 1. I'm going to go back just to give you a sampling. Got to go all the way back to goal 2, show you in goal 2 the metrics. For this one, over on the side, you'll see here's the metrics: suspensions and expulsions, harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents. So I'm going to click on suspension and expulsions. And this is right, all of our public, they can click onto this. So for example, these are the suspensions and expulsions from 2017 to 2021. The goal is less. You want less. So you can see that over time, so the bottom of the graph is 2016, 2017, and you can see the gold is in-school suspensions, and the blue, dark blue is out of school, and then the other blue is expulsions. You can see that on the out of school, they've decreased tremendously. That is because we don't want kids out of school. But what's happened is there was an increase in the in-school suspensions. And some of that was just understanding the definition and what was required to share there. So we are being transparent and we're monitoring, are we keeping kids in school? And are we doing it so that they can learn, but also not just learn academically, but behaviorally? The next I'll share you, this one is from harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents. It is data from, this is from 2017 to 2020. You can see all the way up, we've lessened those incidents over time, going in the right direction. So just a little bit about that. And you can go in and do this search on your own. I'm just giving you a little bit of a highlight. When you go back to the goals for goal 3, there's the metrics. So I'm going to look at fund balance because it's always interesting to see where we are on a fund balance over time. Here is our fund balance over time. Now, the red line is our policy requirement, or the policy that says we need to have 1 month's operating costs within our fund balance. The goal would always be to not be so high above that or to be below that. The goal is to be as close to that policy as we possibly can. And there's things that happen to cause it to go above in those cases, but we won't talk about that right now, but you can see this is an example of measuring our fund balance. Let me pick one more. I'll do staff retention. So that's a metric in our strategic plan. And so you can see over a period of time, starting with 2016, 17, 93% to 2019, 95%. And we'll keep measuring this. This is a metric that we have in there. And then last, go to goal 4. I don't know, I have to click back several times to get back to it. So know that when you're on here, unless there's an easier way that I'm not sure of, Gary, that you could show me. Then strategic plan goal 4. On this one over, you see the metrics there. And I think I was going to share with you, I'll do school messenger communications. See what Gary's got going on here. So he shows you, these are the school messenger communications sent to families by school year. And of course, last year we had a lot, or the 2019-20, because there was just overwhelming need for communication. Let's see, we also have this one on parent community members on the district committees. Anybody in our community go and see how many parents and community members do we have on ACE? How many do we have on the Career Tech Education Advisory? How many do we have on the Community Truancy Board? How many on the Facility Advisory? So we can see how many people are involved in our district committees. So those are, I'm going to stop sharing that and go back, because that's just one tool. That's the district data dashboard. And then the next tool that I was going to share with you, and I'm probably going to not have a lot of time, is going back to the OSPI report card. And I'm going to have to click out again. So I'm going to click onto it, stop sharing. and then share again. If I can find it, I think it's right here. So OSPI has a really neat report card for all school districts. You go to the site, you would just type in OSPI district report cards. You go here and you could pick any district if you want to look at any district, but of course we're going to look at us. So Arlington School District, and you can spend some time. There's so much information in here. And so for example, the very first thing that pops up is our enrollment for the last school year. It has what our percentage was of students who met the standards on some of the tests, the ELA and math and science. It has our graduation rate for the district. It's different for individual schools. Has the math growth but you notice the dates. So see, they're not updated either on some of that, but still good information, has attendance. But this little tab right here, really important. When you click the diversity tab, there's so much on this left side. So for example, our enrollment by demographics, you can see by gender, by race. Then let's see graduation by student demographics. Let's see, and this is where we can see where there's some gaps, where students, where it might be hindering, and you can see where graduating. So for example, white on graduating at the very bottom is 89%, but 2 or more races is 86.7%. Asian is 90%. So, and then when it's less than 10, then they don't put that in there, but just gives you, it's suppressed. Let's go to, let's look at 9th graders on track. So this is one of our metrics. And so to see on 9th graders on track you can see that the different percentages, Hispanic 66.7 versus white 80%. Or 2 or more races, 78%. So there's a lot of information in here. And this is from 2020. You can go, if you scroll down, it has how many students are taking dual credits. So you click on that. And you can see by the 2020 percentages, the lowest percentage there would be Black African American, 43.8%. Versus white 55.7. The highest is Asian, 60.9%. So just some information there. Let's see. They have early learning, student growth, student discipline by student demographics. Click on that. Oh, here it is up here. So this is for behavior violations. It's a little bit harder. The numbers get less because you have less incidents, which is good. So I just wanted you to be aware of the tools, the data tools that we have available to us. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go back to the other PowerPoint. Sorry, this is maybe. So questions, thoughts? We have a great plan. It does need to be revised here and there. We've got maybe some metrics. Right now we have a group of us that are in an equity cohort, and based on what I'm hearing there's some metrics that we should add, but we'll finalize our theory of action within that cohort. And there's some other metrics that we probably should be measuring that we're not. And maybe there's some metrics that we don't need to be measuring anymore. So, but we'll work through that. And maybe during February, we'll share more of those thoughts there. So next, I want to move into, I think it's time to quickly move into policy 1400, if you don't mind. This policy, this is the 5th reading. And the reason is because we have engaged in conversation about the right timing for changing or adding the in-person component back to our board meetings, which the board voted and approved at the last board meeting. So I want to make sure that that our policy is aligned. So this 1400, you can see where we crossed out the first line where it said they normally would be held, the regular board meetings in the boardroom here at the district office, but now we're saying beginning with the second board meeting in January, which is the 24th, we'll hold them at the BPAC. That's all that red is. So that's pretty easy. The next slide, whoops, has an added, we tweaked it a little bit, put the BPAC right here. And then we added that board meetings will be available. Now tonight we had trouble with the live stream. So we're going to work on that to make sure we did record it, but we were having difficulties. So we'll hopefully, we won't have technical difficulties with the live stream in the future, but we'll work through those logistics. But we added that statement. And the other red is the public comment period. We developed some helpful information, some flyers. Thank you, Mary, for sending some examples. So we've made some flyers that really spell out will be available on the district website to give directions, because now we will have public comment both from people attending on Zoom and those in person. And because of that, we're going to require, you can see in this second right here, that people need to register by completing a public comment form. That's if they come in person, or if they're going to attend on Zoom, there's going to be a form. It's a fillable form that asks the same questions as the one that they handwrite or complete on site prior to the call of order, because we have to make sure that we have everything available in front of us. And so we've developed a script. Mary has, we'll provide that for the president or the one that is running the meeting, and individuals will have that opportunity, but they must register in advance and complete the form. Any questions about that?
Hey, I got a question.
Sure.
So it says the board may require. I see that as not a strong enough word. I think it's a great idea that we should do this. I think that'll help keep our meetings concise and clear. I would like to see the board will require, or a stronger, more definitive word.
If the board so chooses, this, when you make a motion, if with that, just note when the motion is made, then just note that.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had any comment about the may, and I'm sure this is from WASDA language, and we've modified it a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I actually, when we were looking at this last week, I thought, well, it should say will, the will should be in there, but WASDA has may, so I don't know why it only says may, but if it is what we are going to require, then we're going to require. The only time it might be a may, I don't know when that might be. I don't know. Maybe there's circumstances, but I still think that if there's a circumstance unusual, then the board president can make that choice. But
I would agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would that be a problem for people that decide later that they would like to comment after the meeting's already begun? Would that become
then they can't, they won't be able to speak. And because think about it right now, on Zoom, we're gonna have
raise
people.
their hand at any time.
Yeah, we can't do that because normally in a regular board meeting, before Zoom, we never asked in the audience. Well, we might have said, are there any more?
Oh, there was a time back before your day here that there was a clipboard and you had to sign in on the clipboard, and then they would bring the clipboard in. And if you didn't get your name on the clipboard before it was brought in,
Yeah, I think just for logistic wise, if a person is wanting to speak to the board, hopefully the only thing is if they got stuck in traffic, or something weird like that. But the idea would be to be thinking that I want to approach the board because the public comment is for the board and they're not really responding to other comments of other people that just spoke. It's really their comments to the board about a topic that they're interested in. So. We modeled the Everett, just so board members are aware, this is modeled somewhat after what Everett does, with their public comments. They do require them to do this similar thing. They have to register online if they're going to speak on Zoom by 4 o'clock before the day of the board meeting. And they have to complete the form if they're going to talk in person before the meeting starts. And so we just said before the call to order. And let's see if there's another, nope, I think that's it. So.
Okay, is that everything you have to present? Because then I think we can have a motion to adopt board policy 1400 with changes or as presented. Either way, if we have a motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion that we adopt board policy 1400 with one change, that in paragraph, I can't see it all, but whatever paragraph that is, third word in, the may is stricken and replaced by will. So the board will require those who wish to speak, et cetera, et cetera. So my motion is to approve 1400 with the changing of a single word may substituted by will.
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt board policy 1400, meeting conduct, order of business and quorum, with the change to the paragraph in public notice. The second paragraph in public notice that talks about will. Is it in that?
It's in the public attendance and comment.
Okay. So the motion from Mike, let me restate, is to approve board policy 1400, meeting conduct, order of business and quorum, with one revision, changing out the word to will in the public attendance paragraph. And I think that is the motion. Can we do a roll call vote, please, Madam Secretary?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
So the ayes have it. It's board policy 1400 is approved with the changes, and it will go into effect starting next week on Monday. And that brings us to the last thing on our agenda, which is our closing. We have our next meeting is tomorrow night. We have study session part 2 on Wednesday, January 19th at 6 p.m. And before I take a motion for adjournment, I just wanted to share one tiny little quote from Martin Luther King Jr. in honor of his day yesterday. He said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education." And I just want to thank you all for coming tonight and being attentive and paying attention. I feel like we got a lot out of this meeting. With that, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion for adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn this meeting. Can we do a roll call vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
All right, thank you all for coming. See you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Good night.
Aye.